Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. We're out here in my woods today, and I hope to make a fun video. Maybe it'll be a little bit informative for you if you've never heard this story before, but if you guys know and follow the channel, you know I'm a history buff. I love all things history, good, bad, the ugly, all that stuff. Well, and I also love knives, and I've tried many different knives over the years. I love the story and all of the stories about the Gurkha soldiers and their kukri knives. If you don't know, it's the one with the big curved blade. It's real weighted and heavy in the front. It's made for chopping, and they were just known, especially during World War II and times before that, for just being ferocious soldiers with those knives. And there's lots of different stories about that. And I have one. I have an actual authentic Nepalese-made kukri that came from the kukri house, I believe it's called. And I've always loved that thing, but I cherish it to the point where it's so nice, I don't really want to take it out and mess it up. It's just a beautiful, beautiful piece. Now, it's not a full-size one. It's the next size down, but it's really about the perfect size if you were going to actually carry this thing, like in a woods type situation like this, doing bushcraft or anything like that. So I am going to end up using it in the future. And I've got a cheap older Chinese one that's just a replica. That was a Chinese made one I picked up years ago, and I usually use that for like my hacking and my chopping. That way I'm not tearing up my nice one, right? So all that being said, I love the kukri. It's a great blade. It's just not super practical in my area for an everyday carry type situation and doing like bushcraft work and stuff like that. It's just not that great for that. I mean, it can be used for that. It's just not the greatest, but I wanted to make this video today because I broke down and I did something here recently. For years and years and years, I've had my eyes on the Bowie knife. It's not a Bowie knife, even though it's spelled B-O-W-I-E. It's a Bowie knife, and it just drives me up the wall when I see YouTubers making videos and they're like, oh yeah, I've got this Bowie knife here. It's a Bowie knife, okay? So anyway, annoyances aside, I wanted to share this with you guys. I recently picked this thing up, and I was a little hesitant to get it at first because it's a foreign import. It's a Pakistani-made blade. It's made by the company SZCO. That's what I call it. It's SZCO. And you can get this knife on Amazon for like $22. So I was like, you know what? It's a carbon steel blade. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to take a chance on it. For 22 bucks, we'll try it out and see what it's like. If you know about the legend of Jim Bowie, you probably already heard this story. But the thing that made this knife famous was a famous battle. It was back in the day when duels were kind of just starting to fall out of favor. You know, they were passing laws and stuff against dueling and things like that, you know, and you weren't allowed to challenge someone to a duel or actually go have a duel. Well, there was a duel scheduled, and it was, they thought they were being clever. They picked this little island out in the Mississippi River, and I believe it was somewhere around Tennessee. I'm not exactly sure where the location was, but they picked this little island that was out in the middle of the Mississippi between two states, so they assumed it would kind of be neutral territory and no one would be able to enforce the law there. So one of Jim Bowie's friends, I guess, or acquaintances, had challenged someone else, or they challenged him to a duel. And about 15 to 17 people showed up on this little island, you know, because it was kind of like, you know, back in high school when you heard about a fight that was going to take place after school, you know, there'd be a big crowd of people that would form up, you know, waiting to see that fight, right? Well, it was the same sort of deal back then. They didn't have, you know, YouTube and all these different endless forms of entertainment at their fingertips. So they had to, you know, they had to make do with what they had. And there was probably nothing more exciting than watching two guys try to kill each other, you know, with some cap and ball pistols or, you know, like muzzle loader type pistols. And so anyway, the duel went on, and like I said, there was like 15 to 17 people there all together. So there were a couple of people dueling, and so they pull their pistols out, they take their shots, and they missed. Now, as I was reading about it, they said that was not uncommon. Oftentimes, guys back in the day would have like a unspoken agreement that you don't shoot me, I won't shoot you, but we'll take our shots near each other where it just barely misses or whatever. So they kind of didn't want to shoot each other to kill them or whatever, that kind of a deal. So they took the shots. They ended up taking 2 volleys after some amount of time passed by, and neither one of the guys that were dueling actually took any bullets. So they shook hands. Things were looking like it was going to be all right. Well, what Jim Bowie didn't know or maybe he did know, is there were some people there, and they were like highly influential people in this area. I can't remember the names of the families. I'm wanting to say one of them's name was the Wells family or something like that. But they were highly influential in that area. One of them was a banker and stuff, and they'd had some run-ins with Jim Bowie in the past, and they didn't like him none. So all of a sudden, this one guy, he pulls out his pistol, and he wasn't even in the duel or anything. He was just a bystander. He pulls out his pistol and takes a shot at another guy. He wasn't even shooting at Jim Bowie, but Jim Bowie took one like in the hip or in the lower stomach or something like that, and he hit the ground. So the fight was on. Everybody pulled out their pistols, and, you know, everybody was shooting. And of course, in those days, you only had one shot at a time. So once your shot was done, by the time you got your powder out, packed your ball and your cap and all that stuff and got your pistol ready to shoot again, that person could be right on top of you with a blade of some kind. And it was in the time when short swords were falling out of favor because people didn't want to carry short swords around. So Jim Bowie had gotten with a guy, and some people say the guy was from Arkansas. I'm not 100% sure, but he got with a blacksmith and made a custom knife that was basically based on a butcher knife, but it had some differences. Like, for example, it had this section right here on the top of the blade here that's actually partially sharpened. It's not as sharp as this main part of the blade, but it is partially sharpened. And there was some debate and some argument about, instead of holding the knife like this during a knife fight, those guys in the day would hold it like this and slice down like this with this back edge of the blade. Even though it's blunter, it would make a much more jagged cut that was harder to seal up and things like that. So anyway, the fight is underway. There's gun smoke everywhere, blood, guts, and tears. And supposedly Jim Bowie took like 3 to 4 shots. And I mean, he took 3 to 4 hits with gunshot, and he got stabbed a couple of times. Well, this banker or one of these family members that were kind of in control of the area, they came over when they saw Jim was down on the ground, and one of them took his little sword and tried to stab him and kill him, right? Well, it bounced off of his sternum, and all that did was piss Jim Bowie off. So he jumped up with his Bowie knife, and he disemboweled that guy. I don't know if the guy was a banker or what, but he sliced him, you know, across the guts or whatever, and his freaking guts fell out on the ground. The guy died almost instantly, and the fight was on. And Jim Bowie and a few of the people on his side made it out okay, even though the doctors that were on scene, they actually had a few physicians on scene just in case things went bad. And even one of the physicians ended up getting shot in the melee when everything was going down. So this was a wild freaking scene. And Jim Bowie was smart enough to know that, hey, these firearms of the day are too slow to reload. And instead of reloading, I'm going to pull out my Bowie knife. Of course, maybe they didn't call it that at that time. I don't know if the name came before or after that epic battle where they had that duel. But there's just lots and lots of stories about Jim Bowie that just, I mean, he was an amazing fighter, an amazing guy, that just bushcraft guy, you know, could live in the wild, sort of like Davy Crockett. And if you're like me, you know, I'm 46, almost 47 years old. So I grew up on watching Davy Crockett and, you know, Jim Bowie and all these things. And those guys were my heroes as I was growing up and things. And I always wanted to be like that when I grew up. So here I am. I have my very own Bowie knife. Now, again, it's not an authentic, made in the USA. I wish it was. But then again, if it was super nice, I probably wouldn't want to use it very much. So that's part of the reason I bought this one. It's nice enough, you know, and I'll pull you in here in a minute or two for some close-ups. But here's the package that it came in. And let's see here. They claim that it's 15 inches overall length. It's a carbon steel blade. It's got a brass guard, a wooden handle, and a genuine leather sheath. And here's the sheath right here. It's fairly nice. I have no problem with that, especially for 22 bucks. I mean, this thing is pretty nice. So I thought today, as a fun video and a break from the SHTF politics that are obviously wrecking our country right now, I thought we would talk about the Bowie knife and just maybe work with it a little bit here. This is the first time I've used it, so I'm not super familiar with it. But mine came pretty sharp, although I'll admit the edge feels a little bit rolled, like it could use some stropping and maybe some fine tuning on the blade. But so far, that's pretty good. These are the first cuts I've actually taken with this thing, so I'm pretty impressed with that. The weight of it is really nice. And I think that's one of the reasons that Jim Bowie probably liked it is, you know, again, they were in a time when they were still doing a lot more bushcraft. So, I mean, you could see I could easily sharpen up a stick if I needed to make a, you know, some kind of a spear or something like that, or if I just needed to make some wood chips, you know, or some feather board or whatever to get my fire started. This is a great tool for that. It's heavy, but this would have been the EDC back in the day. And there was an argument that I was reading about online that some people were saying that the popularity of these kind of fell off after, you know, Jim Bowie died. Of course, if you don't know, he died in the Alamo, and him and Davy Crockett were both down there at the Alamo when that whole thing went down. And they claim, there's no way to substantiate this, but they claim Jim Bowie had some kind of pneumonia or flu or something like that, and he was bedridden during the entire battle. And they claim that when the Mexicans came in to the Alamo, Jim Bowie sat up out of his bed with both pistols in his hand and ready to go, and he was engaging even from his sick deathbed there, basically, and he was killed right there in his bed, is what they claim. So, you know, it was, of course, a real shame the way the whole Alamo went down. And, you know, they always say, remember the Alamo, and I bet you most Americans today don't even know what that is, don't even know what that means, anything about it. They don't know anything about the Battle of the Alamo, and it's very sad. You know, we lost two really great American heroes, Davy Crockett and more. There were more than just Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie there that were involved. But yeah, somehow or another, he ended up down in Texas, and he loved it down there. He married a rich gal right there at the end, and I think she ended up dying of like cholera or something like that. I don't know. Her and her son and Jim's son, they ended up dying, and that broke his heart. So he ended up going and joining, you know, the Texas, was it the Texas Rangers? I don't know what they called themselves, the Texans in that day, to defend the Alamo. And with him, he carried a blade like this. And it's certainly a formidable thing. If somebody was to pull something like that out, even today, I think it would strike fear in the hearts of most men, most people that know what it's capable of. I mean, again, this is the kind of tool you can disembowel someone with. You know, I don't know if it's heavy enough to chop someone's head right off with one cut, probably not, but you could certainly cut some throats with it. You could, and what's great about it is it's good for stabbing as well. So it's not just a slicing tool, although it's great for that, and it has a good flip about it. And one of the things people liked was about that back cut like that back edge being sharpened, is that if you were in a close quarter combat fight, you could just flick that around and slice them on the wrist as they were trying to stab you, right? And it would, you know, it would at least put them off, right? And it would give you some time and protect you from being stabbed. So anyway, I thought I'd bring you guys out here and we'd talk a little bit about Jim Bowie and sharpen up some sticks, see how this thing performs. I mean, that's pretty good. If I needed to make some tent stakes or something, or some vampire stakes or whatever, that would work out pretty well. And you know, one of the tests people always like to do with these knives is they like to baton them and see if they'll split wood. Of course, a knife is not made for splitting wood, but if you were in a survival situation, you might have to do that. So we're going to attempt that. Hopefully I don't break this thing. One of the complaints that I saw online about this particular knife is they say that they're not super hard. Someone did a Rockwell test on it to test the hardness, and they claim that they're not super hard. Like one guy was saying, he didn't even think they heat treated them at all. So it may not hold its edge as well as some of the other nicer ones. It's probably a softer metal than what you would get on a higher quality one. But let's see how let's see how it splits with just a chop here. Well, that actually went in pretty well. I'd say it went in about a ½ an inch there, and I didn't really swing down on it super hard. So let's see if it takes some batoning. Oh yeah, that's actually pretty nice. Now I didn't stay straight in line there, but that worked out pretty well. So if I needed to, you know, buck up some firewood to help me get a fire started, I think that would work out. All right, let's try one more chop here. I'll do a little harder this time. Oh wow, wasn't expecting that. Went right through it. And this is older wood, it's dried out, so I don't know if it would work better or worse on a green piece of wood. Let's just do it that way to be safe. And again, I wouldn't advise doing this. This is probably not the best thing to do with any knife, but it can do it. And I'm impressed with that. Nice clean cut all the way through, split it perfectly. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this for the money. Am I saying it's the best knife in the world? No, it's certainly not. But for a guy like me that just loves the history, the historical factor of it, I think it's pretty cool, especially for the money. So I highly recommend the SZCO Bowie Knife. If you're into bushcraft, if you're into playing out in the woods and chopping things up like I am, then you might enjoy this. I mean, it does pretty well. I have no complaints about this. It splits wood. Let's see if I can split it without the baton. Now, I did actually think about, although I'm not set up for this, but I thought about taking the handle off and heat treating it myself. But I don't really have I don't have a forge or anything. I could probably try to do it with a torch, but I don't think it would be a good enough way to do it. I don't think that would be a consistent enough way to do it. Well, I hit a knot there, but I mean, you can see it splits pretty much effortlessly. Now let's check the blade. It still feels the same as it did when I started. So yeah, guys, I'm a big fan of history, historical knives and weaponry and things like that. And it just doesn't get much better than the Jim Bowie story and the Bowie knife. I mean, it's just a classic American icon. It's just one of these things that it's just cool, man. It's just cool. And you always think of like the iconic things about these different people, the most famous ones, like Davy Crockett, he had the coonskin cap, you know, and Jim Bowie, he had this knife, or a knife very much like this. Oh, one more thing I wanted to tell you about that story at the Alamo. No one knows where the original Jim Bowie knife went, because the Mexicans came in and, you know, they ransacked the place. They took everything that wasn't bolted down and everything that would have been of value to them back in Mexico. And it's speculated that that knife disappeared down into Mexico somewhere, and no one to this day knows where it is. It's just unbelievable. It's unknown what happened to it. It was the most famous knife of the day for sure, maybe ever. Certainly one of the most famous knives ever. So guys, if you're like me and you love history and you love things like that, that remind you of historical times, better times in the United States of America. And I'm not saying that the slavery part of it was the better part. That's not it. The better part was we used to have duels and different things like that. So if a guy slighted you, or, you know, maybe he said something inappropriate to your wife or whatever, you would challenge them to a duel and you would go out and settle that right then. And maybe we need to get back to that. I'm not saying for sure, but we ought to consider it, because the way our system is structured today, there seems to be very little justice for anything that's going on right now. So it helps me to come out here and just have my knife and know that, you know, I could come out here and, you know, once I sharpen this thing up properly the way I want it sharp, which will be razor sharp, that I'll be able to come out here and just have some fun. And, you know, if I needed to use this for, you know, cleaning an animal or something like that, I could do that. I mean, look at that. This is oak here that we're cutting into, and it sliced into that pretty easy. I wasn't really expecting it to get that good of a bite. That's nice, especially considering, like I said, the blade is not to my level, my satisfaction of sharpness, but very cool, I think. If you look really closely, this is not the most precise grind I've ever seen, but one of the things I liked about that was that, to me, that's probably sort of the way it would have been back in the day. You know, I mean, we didn't have the level of precision that we have today as far as working on things like this, and it would have been a lot more unique, because it would have been blacksmith forged and created by hand and things like that. It would have been a one-off. And of course, this is a production thing, probably made in someone's shed over in Pakistan. So yeah, just really cool. I dig it. It's got a nice wide blade on it here, nice thick blade. That would be great for fire starting and things like that, because it's got a nice wide sharp edge back there. So that would be excellent for striking your ferro rod and getting your fire started and things like that. But yeah, that would have been the EDC back in the 1800s sometime, back in the Jim Bowie days. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this little change of pace for the channel here. Talk about American history, one of my favorite things, and knives. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. So let me know what you think about this. Would you go out and buy one of these things? Is it worth it? Even though it's probably not the hardest edge. I'm not seeing any issues or any rolling or anything right now. So far I'm satisfied with it for what I'm going to use it for. It won't really be my EDC knife, but I'll probably carry it out here in the woods anytime I'm out here doing bushcraft work and things like that, just for the historical value, the function of it, the heft and the weight of it, and it's menacing looking. I mean, look at that thing. If somebody pulled out one of these things, it'd probably make you think twice about messing with them or even challenging them for a duel back in the day. So here's what it looks like in the sheath, and it's a decent sheath. It's got a little snap button on it here that holds it together. Now, one thing I'm not a fan of is it hangs real low on my belt, so I'd probably want to come up with a way that I could hold it up higher on my body. And I don't like to carry it when I'm carrying a gun, because I already have a gun on this side over here. I don't know if you could see that or not, but I already carry a gun over there, so I don't really want to have to carry my Bowie knife on the left side, because that'd be too hard to draw it from there. So I want to find a place that I can carry this thing and figure out a way to get my sheath mounted up higher, where it's like right around, my belly area or something like that. But yeah, real cool. Thought I'd share this with you guys just for a change of pace, man. We all know SHTF is going on every day, every single day. And it may come down to a knife fight in the end. You never know. So you might want to make sure you have plenty of melee weapons and knives and different things like that, just in case you run out of ammo one of these days and you need to disembowel someone. Or if you watch my other videos, that would be a way to dispatch a rabbit right there. If I needed to take care of a rabbit and put it on the table, that'd be a way to chop the head off one chop. And that's what I like, clean cut, simplistic, heavy, nothing to break down on it really. A few people did say that their brass guard came loose after a while. Mine hasn't come loose. The handle's decent enough. I mean, it's all right, especially for 22 bucks. So you might want to go check out the SZCO Kid knife, the SZCO Bowie knife. It's SZCO. Go check them out on Amazon. There are dozens of other ones that I could have bought. To me, this is the one that's like the most authentic Bowie knife that there is, at least on the cheap level. The other ones, a lot of them have more modern features and things like that, and I wanted one that was classic style. So, love it. That's what I'm going to be doing for a little while, is just out here chopping and hacking. I mean, that would be excellent for making up tinder for a fire. Just perfect. Look at that. That is just awesome. Not bad, like it was made for it. So guys, appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. Hit the thumbs up if you like it. And until then, we'll see you next time.